Isabel Torres sat in her luxurious living room, lost in her own thoughts. The golden light from the lamps highlighted the delicate contours of her face. Everyone knew that her penthouse in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side was one of the most expensive properties in the city, but few knew the icy atmosphere that reigned inside. She tapped her fingers lightly on the mahogany table, her gaze lost in the tuna distance. The last 7 years flashed before her eyes like a long movie, and Inflation.com. Every scene remained the trail of a marriage that once seemed happy. 7 years ago, when she met Matthew Vargas, her life had taken a 180-degree turn. Despite his humble origins, he possessed a brilliant mind and an innate ability to read the market as if he were destined for success. Back then, Isabel believed in his potential and was willing to build an empire by his side. In the eyes of others, they were a young, ambitious couple, the envy of the emerging New York financial world. But 6 years ago, the first blow arrived. She discovered that her husband, in a drunken stupor, had committed the Datchings Bachestat Timeprin in statue mistake of cheating on her with the secretary of a business partner. At that moment, the press and the shareholders went wild. Their company's stock plummeted, and the rumors about the scandal wouldn't stop. Everyone expected Isabel, with her fragile and sweet appearance, to cry, demand a divorce, or at the very least, create a scene of anger. But to everyone's surprise, 3 days later, she appeared before hundreds of cameras on her husband's arm, declaring that she trusted him and that she generously forgave him. Thanks to that, the market stabilized and the stocks stopped their freefall. That night, Isabel sat alone in the car and watched her serene face in the scra's rearview mirror. She wondered if she was living a nightmare. The trust was already broken, but too many things tied them together. An unfinished ambition, and the child growing in her womb. She didn't want to leave empty-handed or become the laughingstock of society for not knowing how to keep her husband. She learned to be patient, and that patience accompanied her for 6 long years. Until today. In the last few days, the apparent calm had been shaken again. Matthew came home pretending to be busy, showing superficial interest in his wife and son. But Isabel knew perfectly well that his schedule was meticulously organized, thanks to another woman, Sophia Romano, his college sweetheart. Sophia had returned to New York a year ago with her 6-year-old daughter. Since then, Matthew had split himself in two, acting almost like a father to 2 families. While maintaining the title of husband, he was publicly helping Sophia find an apartment and a school for her daughter. Isabel knew he had returned when she heard the front door open, but she didn't even bother to turn her head. The dinner had been cold on the table for hours. She stood up, picked up a thin throw blanket from the sofa, and calmly placed a document folder on the table. Matthew couldn't hide his surprise at seeing his wife's unusual, determined expression. "Were you waiting for me?" His voice was deep, as if he anticipated a complaint about his lateness, but this time she didn't mince words. "I want a divorce," she said coldly, without looking away from his. A sudden silence took over the room. Only the hum of the air conditioning could be heard. Matthew's face changed. First bewilderment, then irritation. "What is wrong with you now? Why are you suddenly asking for a divorce when everything is going so well?" Isabel offered a crooked smile. "Everything is going so well. Who put that fantasy into your head?" Matthew frowned and stepped closer. "Isabel, don't joke around. Ever. Since that night, since my mistake, I haven't done anything wrong." He reached out and almost subconsciously opened the folder on the table. His eyes met a list of clearly detailed figures. Over the last 6 years, the family's net worth had increased from $30 million to $600 million. For 6 years, she said in a calm voice, "I have invested tirelessly, I have solved your crises, and I have taken care of our son." People thought I was a submissive wife, but in reality, I was just waiting for the right moment. The right moment. Matthew looked at her, his brow furrowed. A bad feeling ran through his mind. Is it necessary to go this far? She placed her hand on the brevetteur's documents. This is the list of our marital assets. I want half. You can give it to me in cash or shares, however you prefer. Matthew lowered his voice. Is it? Because of Sophia? I thought you were just jealous, but Isabel maintained her cold smile. Do you think I'm jealous of a past love? Do you consider me that superficial? He took a deep breath. Then, didn't it bother you that I bought her a house and I found a school for her daughter? Have you kept silent all this time just to end up asking for a divorce? Isabel tilted her head slightly, looking at him with determination. Matthew, you're wrong. This divorce isn't an impulsive decision. It's the result of 6 years of careful reflection. What you do with Sophia no longer matters to me. I just know it's time we put an end to this. Matthew remained silent for a moment. He seemed to be trying to process everything, biting his lip. Outside, the wind whistled coldly through the window. Cracks. Finally, he exhaled forcefully and said in a sharp voice, Do you want to sink me again? Do you think I'm different from who I was 6 years ago? I keep striving to grow the company for you and our son. For our son. Isabel let out a dry laugh. In the last year, you've come home a handful of times, and the rest of the time you've dedicated to another girl, and you say it's for our son. Do you think Leo doesn't notice? Upon hearing the name of his 5-year-old son, Leo Vargas, a hint of guilt crossed Matthew's face. It's because I've been very busy. Busy. You had time to step down as chairman of the board and become an Otters independent investor. Time to look at apartments with Sophia. Time to brag to the whole world that you wanted to compensate that mother and her daughter. But you didn't have time to see your own son. Isabel stood up. Her gaze was as sharp as a knife. I don't want to keep arguing with you. Give me back my freedom right now. Matthew stepped forward quickly and grabbed her wrist tightly. She winced slightly at the pressure. You're completely determined, he whispered. Yes. Right now, she said, emphasizing every word. There was a silence. He didn't seem to know what to answer. Isabel pulled away from his grip and pushed the papers toward him. Sign it or not, it's your decision, but my opinion won't change. He clenched his fists and bit his lip. Finally, he spat out with a voice loaded with frustration. Impressive, Isabel. I've underestimated you. She didn't respond and walked out of the living room, leaving behind only an icy space. That night, she didn't sleep. She remembered the moment she discovered his Brascom infidelity. She vividly remembered the sensation of his cold hand on her pregnant belly. She would never forget the night she almost lost her life because of a phone call that pressured her to have an abortion. Now, everything was clear. Nothing held her back. They had a son, but even he couldn't stop her steps. If she stayed, she would only be trampling on her own pain. The next morning, Matthew left early. She looked at the cold food still on the cold table, bit her lip, and picked it up. Today, Leo had a talent class at his preschool. She wanted to take him herself. While driving, Leo chattered endlessly about wanting to show his father a drawing he had made or wanting to go to the park to throw the ball with him. Isabel took his hand gently and said in a voice almost too calm to be real, Sweetheart, Mom is taking you today. Dad is busy. The boy nodded silently. She sighed. A child's eyes don't understand everything, but she knew there was already a wound in Leo's heart. He was just too young to ask. Isabel promised herself, Soon you will understand. Your father isn't always busy. He simply spends his time on other people. After class, Isabel picked up Leo to return home. The boy jumped excitedly. Mom, a new friend came to class, and his dad picks him up every day. My dad hasn't come in a long time. She forced a smile. Well, that's going to change. The boy looked at her innocently. So, is Dad coming tonight? She leaned down and kissed his head. Dad is coming tonight. I'm sure he will, but even she didn't know if Matthew would really come back. She just wanted to give her son a little hope. Upon arriving home, she was surprised to find Matthew sitting in the living room waiting for them. Dad, Leo shouted, running into his arms. Matthew lifted his son and looked at Isabel with a rare expression of joy. Have you had dinner? He asked, cautiously. I ordered takeout. She froze for a moment. She didn't expect him to return so soon after yesterday's intense argument. However, she maintained a serene expression and nodded. Then I'll give Leo a shower first. After the boy fell asleep, Matthew poured her a glass of water and left it on the table in front of her. He sighed and began to speak. We need to talk, she sat across from him, interlocking her hands. If you want to negotiate, look at the papers I sent you. We've been a marriage of convenience for 6 years. I don't think dividing the assets this way is excessive. Matthew stared at her. Isabel, do you really think that to me you're only worth what a few papers say? She raised her head and said slowly, with firmness, in my eyes, love disappeared the moment you slept with another woman. All that remained was a joint partnership. His face paled. Isabel, that wasn't a voluntary choice. I told you I was set up. She interrupted him with a mocking laugh. Have you ever wondered why someone was able to set you up? Because you weren't smart enough. Because you weren't alert enough. He looked away, unable to answer. Back then, he seemed like a man possessed. Just as his business was taking off, he faced countless temptations, and at the slightest distraction, he fell into the trap. But most importantly, after that, instead of trying to heal his wife's wounds, he left her exposed to the poppy gossip of the world. Seeing his expression of remorse, her voice softened slightly. I don't care anymore if you regret it or not. I just want to get out of this vicious circle. Sign, if only for Leo. If you don't, I will find another way. He rubbed his forehead. His voice sounded hoarse. Give me a little more time. All right, she nodded, but don't drag it out too long. I'm tired, too. She stood up and, turning her back on him, left the room. Matthew remained sitting, holding the glass of water without drinking it. He let the cold seep into his skin. That night he couldn't sleep. She barely managed to drift off and woke up in the middle of the night. She imagined herself and her son leaving that house, a large, luxurious, but empty house that once held so many hopes, but had finally become the tomb of her youth. At dawn, she got up to prepare her son's breakfast. She left Matthew sitting on the sofa, still dazed. She didn't want to ask him if he had slept, nor did she care about his bloodshot eyes. Everything had gone too far to turn back. As soon as he signed, everything would be over. She looked at the clock. It was time to take Leo to school. Leo came out excitedly, hand in hand with his purse. Mother. Before leaving, the boy smiled broadly and waved to his father. Dad, you'll be back early tonight, right? Matthew hesitated for a moment and then forced a smile. Dad will try. The boy let out a shout of joy. You have to. Come, Dad. Isabel took her son's hand. Her gaze remained calm, but deep in her heart, she felt a pang of sadness. I knew her son still believed optimistically that his parents would be happy again, like before. However, in her mind, her decision to divorce didn't waver in the slightest. She walked without looking back. She pressed her lips together, fearing that if she allowed herself a moment of weakness, she would burst into tears. On the way, Leo chattered about the little things at school. she responded, distractedly, lost in her complex thoughts. When the car stopped at a red light, she saw in the rearview mirror the fatigue etched into her face. Her patience had reached its limit. In a loveless marriage, she was consuming herself. Putting an end to it drastically was the best option. After leaving her son at the school gate, patting his head and giving him some instructions, she turned around in silence. She had to prepare for her appointment with her attorney, Elena Sands. She would draft all the necessary procedures clearly so she could leave the house as soon as Matthew signed. Before starting, she opened her phone and looked at an old photo, a photo of the three of them. In it, he was smiling radiantly, and she, sitting next to him, was holding a newborn Leo. At that moment, happiness seemed complete. In the Rux.er. And it was just an illusion, she murmured. She took a deep breath, put the phone away, and moved forward with a firm step. Isabel was sitting in front of the desk in Elena Sands' office. Elena was a renowned attorney. Ironically, although she had been Matthew Vargas's personal lawyer on several occasions, she was also the only friend Isabel could trust. They were college classmates, and, after graduating, their paths separated only to meet again. One as the wife of a large corporation president, the other as the lawyer protecting the legal interests of that same businessman. But under that guise, they collaborated in secret. On the table were documents with lists of properties, investment portfolios, and joint and private funds. Elena adjusted her glasses and turned the pages carefully. Seeing the figures, she frowned. She knew he was rich, but she didn't imagine his total net worth reached $600 million. Isabel, you still have many cards in your favor. Isabel took a sip of tea and said calmly, I don't want to waste any more time. Even if he hasn't signed yet, I will find a way to close the negotiation as soon as possible. Elena closed the folder and asked seriously, and what do you plan to do with Leo? Isabel leaned back in the chair and looked down. I want the boy to stay with his father. A man like Matthew Vargas, if you give him a reason, he will hold on to it with all his strength. Right now, apart from the guilt he feels toward me, he doesn't have many reasons to pay attention to his son. This way, he will have no choice but to overcompensate Leo. She clenched her fist slightly. Leo can't keep losing. For the last 7 years, I've been both mother and father. That's enough. At least the boy needs a real father. Elena looked at her friend with compassion in silence. She remembered the first time she met Isabel on the college campus. A bright, intelligent girl with eyes full of hope. Now that same girl spoke of divorce with a terrifying coldness, but Elena knew that Isabel wasn't one to give up easily. She was the type to endure in silence, and when the time came to strike back, she was as decisive as a blade. All right, I'll help you, Elena sighed. I need a few more days to polish the clauses, but don't expect it to be a bed of roses. Matthew Vargas isn't a fool. He isn't a fool, Isabel nodded. He just underestimated me. After saying this, she grabbed her bag and stood up. Outside the office, the wind had suddenly started to blow. She crossed her arms and buttoned her jacket. A corner of her heart ached. Perhaps because of all the pain she had had to swallow, or perhaps because she vaguely remembered the day she left the hospital after the procedure to prevent a miscarriage 6 years ago. Back then, Matthew made all sorts of promises that he would never make her suffer again, that he would love her and his son forever. All those promises had vanished like smoke. In the afternoon, Isabel returned home. Upon entering the W.O.W. courtyard, she ran into Sofia Romano. The woman was standing next to her car, with her arms crossed, showing that expression of fragility that always characterized her. Seeing Isabel, she tilted her head slightly in greeting, but a clear mockery was drawn on her lips. Mrs. Vargas, you're back. I just saw Matthew and he told me that in no way are you getting divorced. Isabel knew perfectly well what Sophia's intentions were. She appeared deliberately before her, launching provocative words to test her reaction. She just smiled slightly. Oh, really? That's too bad. It's not something he can decide alone. What matters is whether he has signed or not. If you're interested, keep waiting. Sophia's face paled for an instant, but she kept her voice trembling. Isabel, do you hate me? Matthew and I loved each other. Or because he is helping my daughter and me. You don't understand. Between us, there's only a friendship from old classmates left. He only helps me because I'm going through difficulties. Isabel interrupted her. I don't care how many feelings are left between you. As long as you don't bother my son, Leo, that's enough. As she was about to enter the house, she heard Sophia's sharp voice behind her. You should remember that. You also got involved in another relationship to get this honorable marriage. People say you latched onto Matthew to escape your status as an illegitimate daughter and enjoy wealth and fame. Isabel stopped. She clenched her fists again. The rumors about her origin, about the biological father who was only a shadow in her life. But she didn't lose her composure. She turned around and spat out every word. In this New York, anyone can adorn a story. Do you want to know what I've achieved? You'll find out soon. She pushed the door and went inside, leaving Sophia outside. The woman, unable to contain her rage, wanted to say something more, but didn't dare to cause a scene. After all, Matthew's legitimate wife hadn't divorced him yet, and she was no match to provoke her openly. Inside the house, Matthew was sitting on the sofa. His look was complex. He had probably heard the conversation outside. Isabel walked up directly and said, calmly, "Did you call her?" "No, she came on her own. She said she wanted to apologize to you or something like that," he replied with a tense face. I couldn't control it. She sat in the chair opposite him and rubbed her tired forehead. Matthew, let's not waste any more time. Sign the divorce papers. He bit his lip as if I wanted to say something. Isabel, I really don't want to. Don't pressure me. She looked at him. In her eyes, the tenderness of yesteryear had disappeared. Completely. You once promised me, when I was lying in the hospital bed, that if one day I couldn't forget the past, you would set me free. Do you remember? He was speechless. He remembered the day she lay in bed with a pale face and he knelt down to beg for forgiveness. His heart ached. I remember. Then don't break your promise, she said firmly. Don't turn me into someone who has to fight in court. It wouldn't be a pleasant image for either of us. I'll know that better than anyone. He looked her straight in the eyes, as serene as stone. Then he clenched his fists and smiled bitterly. All right, I'll sign, but on one condition. Custody of Leo will be mine. She nodded slightly. I had thought of that, too. He was surprised she accepted so quickly. It took him a while to take a deep breath. If you want the assets, I'll give you everything. I just want my son. She wasn't surprised at all. Don't worry. I don't intend to take your son away from you. But don't forget that Leo knows perfectly well that his mother isn't an irresponsible person. When he is old enough, I want him to have the freedom to decide who he wants to live with. He didn't argue further and nodded. It seemed it was time to let her go. He stood up, put on his jacket, and headed for the door. She said goodbye in silence. Her heart had grown cold, but she felt a momentary pang of pain. 6 years of living together couldn't prevent this end. That night, Isabel called Elena to inform her that Matthew had accepted the divorce and that only the Matthew paperwork remained. On the other end of the line, Elena sounded euphoric. Great, then we'll prepare the papers quickly for you to sign. She responded with a brief yes, thinking, all of the future that would free her from that marriage. A whirlwind of complex emotions invaded her. 3 days later, her son Leo had a slight fever. Isabel stayed home to take care of him. Matthew wasn't there, probably busy, closing pending investment contracts. At night, Leo, curled up under the sheets, said in a weak voice, "Mom, I miss Dad." She hugged him and consoled him, smiling bitterly. "Dad will come." She had said that phrase so many times that even she didn't believe it anymore. The boy, half asleep, asked, "Mom, why don't you smile as much as you used to?" The question took her breath away. She felt a lump in her chest. She knew. Children are more sensitive than anyone. After he fell asleep, she went down, silently to the kitchen to drink a glass of warm water. The clock was nearing midnight, but he hadn't returned. At dawn, the doorbell rang. She thought it was Matthew and was surprised, but it was a courier. Inside the envelope was the divorce agreement sealed by Matthew's, quote, lawyer. It seemed he had already taken the initiative and finished all the presenter paperwork. All that was missing was her signature. She held the folder in her hands and took a deep breath. Then, slowly, she took a pen and signed, Isabel Torres. The moonlight filtering through the window illuminated her face. A tear rolled down her cheek, and she wiped it away with her hand before it touched the paper. She knew this wasn't an easy end, but the beginning of a bigger storm. But it didn't matter. She was prepared. As she put the pen down, she shattered the last hope she had left. This marriage, in the end, could no longer be sustained. She stood up and went out onto the balcony alone. She contemplated the horizon full of bright lights. In the vastness of New York, few knew that a woman had just signed her divorce papers in the middle of the night, and no one knew that she had been preparing for this moment since that day, 6 years ago, when she almost lost her son and her own life. 6 years seemed like a long time, but they were also like a vain dream. A dream she herself had put an end to. Tomorrow, she would continue to face the future, her responsibilities as a mother, and the turbulent currents of the world. At least she wouldn't lock herself in a lie anymore, nor would she have to endure the feeling of betrayal for one more minute. She took a deep breath. The night air brushed her nose, half refreshing, half cutting. She felt a great relief in a corner of her heart. From now on, she could do whatever she wanted without worrying that the person by her side was hiding something or betraying her. She could use her capacity and intelligence to move forward with firmness. It didn't matter what people said about her, the newly divorced wife, the woman who had suddenly become rich. After standing there for a while, she entered her bedroom and took out her cell phone. A message from her lawyer, Elena. A single line. "Congratulations, Isabel." Seeing those words, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Finally, she locked the screen and collapsed onto the bed. The pillow was damp, but she no longer had the strength to think. A new day, a new identity, awaited to her. She told herself, this is just the beginning. And exhausted, she fell asleep. Isabel woke up early. The relentless sound of her phone startled her. On the screen appeared countless messages from friends, acquaintances, and even business partners. She realized the press had already found out about her divorce. Public opinion had ignited much faster than she expected. She turned on the TV and saw a brief news story about the mysterious wife who had just announced her divorce from Matthew Vargas. The host speculated that she had been waiting for the thousand opportunity to get her hands on a huge fortune. The comments on social media weren't much kinder. Most accused her of being greedy. Isabel smiled bitterly, turned off the TV, and called Elena. The lawyer assured her that the documents were perfectly in order and that the press had no basis to spread rumors that she had unfairly stripped her husband of his assets. However, Her silence only fueled the suspicions, generating all kinds of conjectures. From having set a trap for her husband to the marriage being nothing more than a ploy. She didn't care. The only person she was worried about at that moment was her mother, Mrs. Garcia. Since she found out about the Breckersley 107 divorce, she hadn't stopped calling her, crying and saying it was a terrible blow. In reality, Isabel knew her mother wasn't as worried about her daughter's pain as she was about the loss of the goose that laid the golden eggs. And indeed, she received a call from Mrs. Garcia. Her voice was aggressive. "What do you plan to do? Are you going to give in to that man because of 4 rumors? Listen to me, daughter. Don't be stupid enough to give up that wealth." Isabel responded in a tired voice. "Everything is already agreed upon, Mom. I'm not giving up anything." Mrs. Garcia seemed satisfied. "That's how I like it." Upon hanging up, she felt a weight in her heart. She knew her mother was greedy, but deep down, she only wanted her daughter to live without wanting for me anything. Unfortunately, there was never any understanding between them. Her mother had always believed that happiness consisted of trapping a rich man, while Isabel just wanted to escape a fake marriage. In the early afternoon, she received an Iblena's summon unexpected call from Matthew Vargas's personal assistant. He informed her that the press was spreading rumors that Isabel had forced her husband to sign an Oblo.ic abusive agreement and had demanded an unfair share of the assets. Although no one had official proof, the pressure on the company was increasing. It didn't surprise her. The media pressure was something she already expected. What puzzled her was why Matthew was communicating with her through his assistant. Clearly, he didn't want to talk directly. She tried calling him, but he didn't answer. She leaned back in the chair, tired, assuming he would be in an emergency meeting to manage the scandal. At nightfall, Isabel received a message from a tabloid journalist. "Are you willing to talk about your divorce? We heard you've moved your things out of the Vargas house. Is the rumor true that you demanded financial compensation since you didn't get custody?" She didn't want to get into arguments and deleted the message. The next day, she decided to see her mother to avoid problems. As soon as Mrs. Garcia saw her daughter, she started scolding her. "You've made the whole neighborhood talk about us. You've embarrassed me." Isabel pulled up a chair and responded calmly. "Don't worry, Mom. Getting a divorce doesn't mean I'm going to give everything up. I'll take care of my own affairs. I am responsible for my life." Mrs. Garcia, still angry, raised her voice. "Responsible, daughter, do you think it's easy to live in this world without money and without anyone to lean on? Do you think anyone is going to respect a divorced woman?" Isabel listened in silence, her face hardening. Finally, she stood up and said, "Mom, take good care of yourself. Don't worry about the rest." Upon leaving the coffee shop, she received a call from the school. It was the teacher's voice. "Mrs. Torres, Leo seems a bit sad today. He said he wanted to call you. Could you come pick him up a little earlier, if you have time?" Isabel was surprised for a moment. The last time Leo had a cold, she also hadn't been able to pay him proper attention. And now, the boy was sad again. She headed quickly to the school. Leo was sitting in a corner of the classroom, head bowed. As soon as he saw his mother, he burst into tears and told her that his friends had teased him, saying it was as if he had no father even though he did. Isabel hugged her son tightly and consoled him. "It's okay, sweetheart. You have me. And Dad loves you too. It's just that he's very busy. Don't listen to what others say." On the way home, the boy asked shyly, "Mom, are we moving somewhere else? Dad isn't going to live with Mom anymore." She was speechless. She didn't know how to answer. Finally, she stroked his head and forced a smile. "We've only left that house for a while. Dad is still your dad. That night, Matthew appeared without warning in front of the house where Isabel was staying temporarily. Seeing him, Leo ran toward him, sobbing. Dad, today at school. Matthew crouched down, hugged his son, and said in a tender voice, No, son. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you had to hear such ugly things. Isabel stood there, watching them. Her heart ached. After calming Leo and taking him to his room, Matthew turned toward Isabel. His eyes were tired. It's my fault. I wasn't careful with the press. I'm so sorry Leo was affected. Can I stay here a moment? I need us to talk. She nodded silently. Although she thought there was nothing left to discuss, they sat in the living room. He showed her the latest financial reports. The figures indicated that stocks were falling and that the public's trust in the company was eroding. Matthew said in a low voice, I just want you to publicly clarify that we have separated amicably and that you didn't pressure me. Isabel knew he wanted to use her as a times shield to protect his reputation, but that also meant staining hers once again. She said coldly, What you're afraid of is the stock falling and losing clients. 6 years ago, you also used my image to calm public opinion. Have you? Forgotten? Matthew was speechless. Back then, it was enough for her to smile in front of the cameras for everything to calm down. He had taken it for granted, never asking her if it was difficult for her. Now, seeing her sitting with that serene expression, he realized she was no longer the fragile wife who sacrificed herself unconditionally. I know, I was wrong, he said. If you don't want to do it, I won't force you. I just ask that you don't go out and confirm those horrible rumors. Don't worry, she replied. I'm not so idle as to give explanations for someone who has nothing to do with me anymore, but I'm also not so stupid as to go around speaking ill of you. Each on our own. Those biting words pierced his heart. He bit his lip and stood up. Before leaving, he said in a low voice, I will compensate Leo. Don't stop me. I don't intend to stop a child from seeing his father, she responded concisely. I hope you understand that all your efforts from now on are to compensate your son. She accompanied him to the door. Watching his car disappear into the darkness, she felt a momentary emptiness. There were still too many things tying them together, but it was better than living under the same roof. Upon returning home, she saw that Leo had fallen asleep. His face still retained a trace of sadness. She sat by his side and took his hand. That night, she received a message from Elena. The divorce scandal had caused the temporary suspension of a major contract Matthew had with an associated company. This would cause him financing difficulties. Isabel closed her eyes. She wondered if she should take the initiative and help him stabilize the stocks, as she did 6 years ago. Finally, she shook her head. They were no longer in a position where they needed each other. She was moving forward alone to the next stage of her life, and Matthew had to solve his own problems. She took a deep breath and decided to accelerate the paperwork to close all financial matters. That way, she could focus completely on Leo. The next morning, Isabel filled out a series of documents and sent them to Elena. She wanted to put a clean end to 6 years of patience. Looking back, she regretted nothing, but she also felt no nostalgia. If Matthew's company stumbled, or his stocks plummeted, it was no longer her responsibility. She had paid her debt. Before leaving, she received a video call from Leo. The boy showed her a drawing of a family of 3 holding hands. She froze for a moment, then forced a smile, and complimented the drawing. When she hung up, she stood by the window. An indescribable bitterness filled her heart, but she knew the divorce was a gateway to liberation for both of them. She gripped her phone and thought about the road ahead. There might be social prejudices, but she was prepared to face them. From today on, she would live independently, without any more doubts. When the news of Isabel's divorce spread, Throughout New York, the press turned its attention to Sophia Romano. It was rumored that she had returned to reclaim her position as the first love. Although she didn't speak directly, many gossip articles claimed that Sophia was trying to attract Matthew by all means. In reality, Sophia was in a rather complicated situation. She was about to be evicted from the luxurious apartment in Matthew Vargas's name, and an old family debt remained unresolved, so she needed to plot a new plan. One afternoon, Sophia met with a journalist specializing in the private lives of celebrities in a corner of a coffee shop and said in a low voice, "I know some secrets about Isabel Torres that the public doesn't know yet. If you're interested, I'd be happy to provide them." Upon hearing this, the journalist's eyes lit up and he turned on his recorder. It was actually a little plan by Sophia to inflate stories about Isabel, making the world think that Isabel had been the third party in her past relationship with Matthew. At the same time, she hinted that Isabel had used the pregnancy to tie Matthew down. In less than 2 days, those rumors began to spread. Many people whispered that Isabel had only played the part of the miserable wife to gain the support of public opinion and that the real victim was Sophia. Some posts on social media hinted that the ex-wife of the Vargas family wasn't as innocent as she seemed. Isabel read those comments by chance while browsing the internet. She looked at them coldly. For years, she had gotten used to people's inventions, and Sophia's tactics no longer surprised her. The only thing that worried her was why Sophia kept holding on to Matthew with such insistence. At dusk, she received an unexpected call from Sophia. The woman's voice was as light as the wind. "Isabel, I suppose you've seen the rumors. Truly, I had no intention of discrediting you, but the press is very malicious. They've twisted my words. How about you go out and clarify it? I'm worried your image will be further damaged." Isabel let out a laugh. She knew that theater play well, provoke a storm, and then call, feigning innocence to bait her. She responded calmly, "If you thought such insignificant rumors could make me angry, you're wrong. I don't intend to clarify anything. If you want to continue, go ahead. I don't have time for you." Seeing that she couldn't destabilize her, Sophia immediately changed her tone, adopting a pleading attitude. "Isabel, you used to be so noble and generous. Please, give me a chance. We are both women, let's not hurt each other. I know that in the past, you won. Now, please." Isabel interrupted her. "I have nothing to discuss with you." After hanging up, she wondered how someone so shameless could exist. She smiled bitterly and called Elena to ask her to investigate the press's movements. Shortly after, Elena gave her surprising news. Sophia's joint investment fund had been canceled due to various legal problems. Apparently, she was starting to find herself in a dead end. Lately, with the divorce proceedings with Matthew almost finalized, Isabel had free time. She suddenly felt the urge to counterattack. After all, if she had kept silent for years, it was because the right moment hadn't arrived yet. Now that everything had changed, she didn't have to keep being indulgent with Sophia. A day later, Mrs. Garcia appeared without warning at the building where Sophia had an office rented temporarily. The insults echoed loudly. "Hey, don't think that with that innocent face, you're going to deceive my daughter. Who do you? I think you are to take her husband and defame her. I'm going to take your whole family to court." Employees swarmed, but no one dared to intervene. Sophia ran out, embarrassed, and tried to pull Mrs. Garcia inside, lowering her voice. "Ma'am, please, calm down. If you make this scene here, how are we going to work? Now you're scared?" shouted Mrs. Garcia. "Why weren't you scared before when you insulted my daughter? Did you think I was going to stand idly by?" In a corner, Isabel watched the situation calmly through a camera, a smile on her lips. Her mother, because of old grudges, hated Sophia's family. Now, before she had to lift a finger, her mother had already taken it upon herself to put Sophia in her place. She couldn't ask for more. As expected, Sophia was speechless and could only babble some nonsensical phrases to calm Mrs. Garcia. Finally, to avoid further disturbance, Sophia called security to throw Mrs. Garcia out, promising that she wouldn't interfere in her affairs again. Mrs. Garcia remained haughty. "You'll see, my daughter Isabel isn't one to be trampled on." As the door slammed shut, the whole hallway of the building was filled with whispers. Many people laughed at Sophia's humiliation. In the car, Isabel looked at her mother's triumphant expression and sighed. "Get in the car," Mrs. Garcia chattered excitedly. "Did you see? Your mother is incredible. Right now she must be pale with fear. Let's see if she dares to speak ill of you again." Isabel responded concisely. "As long as you've had fun, that's enough, but don't make things bigger. I don't want any more noise." Mrs. Garcia snorted, but kept an expression of satisfaction. In less than half a day, the news of the scandal caused by Mrs. Garcia also became news, but this time, public opinion tilted in favor of Isabel. People thought that any mother would protect her child, while Sophia was criticized for throwing Matthew Vargas's former mother-in-law out of the building. Upon returning home, Isabel received a message from a friend in the investment sector. "Congratulations. The project you invested in a while ago is about to be approved. They say its market value could double. I heard your net worth will soon reach $600 million. She gripped her phone tightly. A feeling of satisfaction invaded her. The goal she had set for herself was about to become reality. From the other side, Elena brought her news. "I've checked it. If the market goes well, your net worth will officially reach $600 million. Do you need to prepare anything else?" "For now, keep it a secret," Isabel responded. "Let's announce it when it goes up a bit more. I don't want to draw attention too soon. Someone like Sophia could go crazy." That night, she tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. She remembered again why she had endured for 6 years, simply because she knew Matthew Vargas was an anti-mine investment genius. His business could go very high. She was willing to participate in the bet, silently investing by his side and sharing the profits. Once at the top, she intended to retire and reap the rewards. That's why she turned a blind eye to his infidelity and even had a child as a way to gain his absolute trust. Now, she had finally gotten what she wanted and felt light. Although she had no feelings left for that man, everything felt like a transaction that had concluded on time. Early in the morning, breaking news arrived. Sophia had lost the trust of several partners who had canceled their contracts in a chain reaction. The luxurious apartment where she lived also went on the market, as Matthew's company decided. It was an unnecessary expense. Isabel saw photos of Sophia packing her bags with a disheveled look. Her face was pale. It was also rumored that she was drowning in debt and that several creditors were harassing her. She tried to ask Matthew for help, but he didn't pick up the phone. Apparently, he was also busy managing his company in the middle of the media storm and didn't have time to help the person who had caused the uproar. The world went around. The one who just a few days ago was so haughty now found that herself with no way out. At noon, Isabel stopped by the office to sign the BRAS official report of her assets. Upon holding the document, the figure of $600 million jumped to her sight. Elena joked, "Now you're the most prominent person in New York. By the way, Sophia is a mess and is preparing to leave. It's rumored she's run out of money." She folded the document and smiled. "Better that way. It's good that she disappears. If she stays longer, she'll only cause problems. I want to raise Leo in peace." Elena nodded. "All right." At that moment, the phone rang. It was Matthew. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said briefly. "But Sophia has come to the company crying and causing a scene. Because she wants to see me." Isabel listened and then said, "Solve it yourself. It has nothing to do with me." On the other end, his voice faded. "I know. It's just that she's crying and saying she doesn't want to go on living. I'm worried. Something bad will happen." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "That's no longer your responsibility. It's what she brought on herself. Leave her alone." And she hung up the phone firmly. In the afternoon, she left the building, raised her head, and looked at the clear sky. She had taken all the weight off her shoulders. The one who clung with insistence had to leave, and the one who wanted freedom had finally achieved it. She smiled. Her heart was at peace. Early in the morning, Isabel woke up in her new rented apartment. It still felt strange, but at least her mind was much lighter. She put on her slippers and looked at the clock. It had just turned 7 a.m. Today, she planned to officially announce her divorce from Matthew Vargas through a prestigious financial magazine with which she maintained a good relationship. She slowly poured herself a glass of water while listening to the birdsong from the balcony. In her mind, she reviewed the noisy information of the last few weeks, from the moment they had finalized all the divorce procedures to the news about the wobbling of his company's stocks, and especially the rumor that she had walked away with a net worth of $600 million. She took a deep breath and told herself she shouldn't waver. To silence all speculation, she had chosen to face it publicly once and for all. As soon as she left the apartment, she ran into reporters guarding the entrance. She had a bad feeling, but maintained her composure and kept walking. As expected, they pounced on her, pointing their cameras at her face. "Mrs. Torres, is it true that you have officially divorced Mr. Vargas? We've heard that all his assets have been transferred to you. What do you think about it? Didn't you pressure him? It's rumored that Mr. Vargas is in a difficult situation." Faced with the barrage of questions, she just smiled slightly. "I'm not going to answer here. Next week, I will make an official statement to the media." Having said that, she quickly pushed her way through the crowd and got into her car. She knew that at this moment, anything she said would be twisted, so it was best to choose a trusted channel. If Matthew's company stumbled or his stocks plummeted, it was no longer her responsibility. She had paid her debt. Before leaving, she received a video call from Leo. The boy showed her a drawing of a family of 3 holding hands. She froze for a moment, then forced a smile and complimented the drawing. When she hung up, she stood by the window. An indescribable bitterness filled her heart, but she knew the divorce was a gateway to liberation for both of them. "I haven't come to give explanations or justifications. I just want to confirm 2 things. First, Matthew Vargas and I have finished our divorce process. Second, he has transferred the assets voluntarily without any coercion." The director nodded, turning the pages of his notebook. "Are you going to reveal specific information about that figure? It's rumored to be $600 million. She smiled. "All details will be sent by my lawyer. I don't want to repeat that figure. I'm tired of people valuing my marriage in terms of money. For me, money is only a part. Please, don't exaggerate it." He, deeply impressed, promised her the interview would come out in a special issue. Isabel stood up and said goodbye. She felt much lighter. She hoped that once the official article came out, all the controversy would gradually calm down and she could return to a normal pace of life. Upon leaving the editorial office, she received an unexpected call from Matthew's assistant. "Mrs. Torres," he said urgently, "President Vargas is giving a press conference this afternoon to officially confirm the divorce and the transfer of assets. He asks if it's not inconvenient for you to attend." She narrowed her eyes. Why the rush? The assistant's voice wavered a bit. The company is under pressure. Stocks are continuing to fall, and the board of directors wants a clear clarification, without dragging out the scandal. The president has also thought about it a lot. Isabel remained silent for a few seconds, then said firmly, I won't go. Tell him to announce whatever he wants, but don't expect me to be by his side. She hung up the phone. A contradictory feeling invaded her. 6 years ago, she stood by his side in front of the cameras to help him regain trust. If she repeated it now, it would be like burying the freedom she had just regained. Everything had to end. They shouldn't remain entangled. In the afternoon, she found a quiet coffee shop to rest for a while. Browsing social media, she saw the news that Matthew had given the press conference, explaining that they had separated peacefully and that she had never pressured him. At the same time, he clarified that all agreements had been transparent and that the distribution of assets was based on the effort Isabel had dedicated during 6 years. He also said that he owed her an apology for his past mistakes. Minutes later, the comments skyrocketed. The number of people supporting her began to increase, arguing that a talented woman deserved that compensation. There were still those who believed she had been a cunning calculator, but their proportion was decreasing. While reading the news, she saw the name Javier Mendoza blink on her phone. They had barely seen each other in years. There were rumors they had been a couple in the past, something she never denied, but everything had been buried in the .con raid. Past. She hesitated for a few seconds and then answered, hello. On the other end of the line, his warm and calm voice sounded. Hello, Isabel, long time no see. I've seen the news. Are you okay? She interlaced her hands on the table and sighed softly. Thanks, Javier, I'm fine. I didn't expect you to call at a time like this. He seemed to think about it for a moment. I've been away, abroad, and I returned to New York yesterday. By chance, some friends were talking about you. I found out you had gotten divorced. She smiled slightly. Yes, it's true. My marriage is over. There were a few seconds of silence on the other end. Then he said softly, I don't know very well what to say. I just wanted to tell you to take care. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me. Thanks, really. I'm fine, she responded simply. We'll see each other if the occasion arises. He responded with a clear sure. And hung up. She put the phone down and looked at the black screen. Memories assaulted her, transporting her to her college days. Back then, she and Javier had a pure relationship. 2 years of beautiful youth that ended because of family differences and the reality that a marriage was difficult. It hurt her, but time erased everything. At night, she returned to the apartment and received a call from her mother. Mrs. Garcia was euphoric. People say, you're incredible. You've struck gold as soon as you divorced. I'm so happy. She sighed and nodded vaguely. I'm coming to see you tomorrow, her mother continued. Show me your new house. Knowing it was useless to refuse, she said, come, but don't make any noise. I don't want to be the center of attention. Mrs. Garcia laughed out loud and made all sorts of promises. Around 10 p.m., Leo called. The boy chattered, Mom, today I saw Dad on TV. He said he will keep loving me and he doesn't want me to. I think he's abandoned me. And you know what? He promised me that this weekend he'll take me to the pool. That's great, sweetheart, she said tenderly. Behave yourself and take care. If Mom needs you, I'll come when I can. The boy's voice had a hint of sadness. But I always need Mom, and Mom isn't here. Mom, can't we all go together with Dad? She felt a lump in her throat and took a while to answer. Finally, she said in a prostus on rota tonstada, low voice, I know, sweetheart, but for now Mom has to live somewhere else. Dad will take care of you. If Leo behaves, Mom will come to pick you up. Okay. The boy, although disappointed, replied yes. Upon hanging up, she hugged an Soul cushion on the sofa. Her eyes stung. Leaving Leo with Matthew had been an intelligent choice, but her heart always ached when thinking about her sons. Look, in any case, she couldn't keep living with someone she no longer trusted. The next morning, the exclusive interview in Financial Perspective was published, confirming a peaceful and transparent divorce. Her name, Isabel Torres, appeared officially for the first time before the public as a businesswoman with notable investment capacity. Many people were surprised to discover that behind Matthew Vargas was a woman who was anything but ordinary. Business partners rushed to send her collaboration proposals. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. She selected some trusted partners and politely rejected the rest. She didn't want to become a Sachens, walking ATM for unviable projects. In the early afternoon, Elena stopped by her office, left a stack of newspapers on the table, and smiled. Today you've become truly famous. Everything is praise. They say you're a brilliant businesswoman who has amassed a fortune on her own. And now what? Will you continue to conquer the market, or will you retire discreetly? She put down her pen and thought for a moment. For now, I'm going to give myself a break. I have enough to live comfortably. And if another interesting investment project comes up, I'll consider it. These last 6 years of complicated marriage have exhausted me mentally. Elena nodded and reminded her, don't forget you have Leo. If at any moment you want, and it's beneficial for him, you can request a change of custody. She shook her head. For now, I prefer he stays with his father. I don't want to hurt him more with custody fights. Elena touched her hand with compassion. You always think of the boy first. I've been told Matthew gave yesterday's press conference to take the pressure off you. She looked out the window and said in a low voice, maybe he wanted to do something good, or maybe it was for the company. I don't want to dwell on it anymore. Whatever happens, my decision to divorce won't change. Elena understood her point and changed the subject. Speaking of the alumni, reunion of the School of Business scheduled for next week. The ones organizing the event this year are very important people. She smiled. They want you to come and share your experience in investments. Do you plan to go? She hesitated. I don't know. It's an opportunity to see old friends, but I'm sure I'll run into Javier. It's not that I care, but I don't want to get involved in more rumors. Elena let out a laugh. Javier is still single, before and now. He has no scandals. Don't worry. And this is a good opportunity to prove your worth, not to carry the label of Matthew Vargas's ex-wife. Upon hearing that, she narrowed her eyes. Finally, she nodded. All right, I'll go. I have to create new relationships. I can't always be hidden. After Elena left, Isabel looked at herself in the office mirror. A confident woman with a touch of lipstick and perfectly styled hair. The soft and docile image of the past had been replaced by a sharp acuity. She observed herself in silence, wondering if she was really coming out of the shadows of the past. In the late afternoon, she drove to school to see Leo, as she had promised. The boy was about to start elementary school, and she wanted to know how he was doing in his studies. Upon seeing his mother, Leo let out a shout of joy and ran toward her with happy eyes. Mom, did you really come? She crouched down, stroked his head without hiding her affection. She took him for a walk around the courtyard while he told her things about his friends and how the teacher had praised him for how well he drew. Isabel felt it while listening, smiling from time to time. Although the boy was small, each of his words warmed her heart. Just at that moment, Matthew appeared at the school gate. He probably knew she was going to see the boy. He approached and greeted her with a nod. His short Hair fluttered slightly in the evening breeze. In his gaze, there was a touch of discomfort. They didn't talk much, staying close to Leo so as not to disconcert him. But while Leo ran to see his teacher, Matthew called her suddenly. "Isabel, how are you lately?" She looked at him with a serene face. "I'm fine, thanks." He seemed to have a lot to say, but didn't know where to start. Finally, he blurted out, "If you have any problems, tell me. We are no longer husband and wife, but still, I want to help you." She was a little surprised by the sincerity of the phrase, but didn't respond. Just nodded slightly. Leo returned chattering and asking his parents to buy him an ice cream. She looked at Matthew. Only then he forced a smile. "I'll take him. Are you coming?" She shook her head and patted her son on the shoulder. "Mom is a little busy. Go with Dad. I'll buy you one another day." Leo, although crestfallen, took his father's hand and, turning around, waved to his mother. She stayed still watching how they headed to the car. At least for now, she wasn't ready to sit at the same table as Matthew. When twilight fell, she returned to her car in silence. She felt a lump in her chest. She had achieved what she wanted, but the emotions didn't seem to have calmed at all. Perhaps time would heal everything. She started the car and joined the congested traffic, thinking about the upcoming alumni reunion and the changes she couldn't yet foresee. Above all, she knew she had opened a new page as an independent woman, carrying the memories of 6 years. She promised herself, "Since I've come this far, I have to be more determined and strong." Those words resonated in her head, accompanying her all the way to her home. The day of the reunion, Isabel drove to the West Palace Hotel in the heart of New York, where the reunion of the alumni of the School of Economics and Business was being held. She parked the car and contemplated the imposing building, the shimmering marble corridors. This setting made her nervous. It had been a long time since she attended this type of event. Entering through the main door, the dazzling lights overwhelmed her. Hundreds of people conversed animatedly. Some college classmates saw her and exclaimed, "Wow, if it isn't Isabel Torres. Long time no see, you've changed a lot." She smiled slightly and responded with a light hug. They scrutinized her from head to toe with curiosity. "You've been very famous lately. You're in the newspapers all the time. Didn't you come with your husband?" She froze for a moment. They probably didn't know she had gotten divorced. Just as she was about to speak, another voice was heard behind her. "With the mess there's been these days with the news of the divorce, who would think to ask that?" They turned and recognized an old classmate known for his penchant for gossip. Isabel maintained her composure and smiled. "Yes, it's true. We've decided to take separate paths." The atmosphere became uncomfortable for an instant. Some, embarrassed, changed the subject. Others, curious, didn't dare to ask more. She raised her champagne glass, took a sip, and excused herself, saying she was going to greet the professors to get away from there. She was on one side of the room when she heard someone calling her. Upon turning, she saw a tall man in an elegant suit. His eyes were serene and his smile as warm as ever. It was Javier Mendoza. "Javier," she said, sketching a smile and nodding slightly. "I haven't seen you in years. You're the same. You haven't aged a bit." He approached smoothly and guided her to a quiet corner. They sat, far from the approach smoothly. Noisy crowd. He poured himself a wine and offered her a glass of water. "How have you been?" he asked in a warm and deep voice, like the breeze of late autumn. She smiled. "I'm fine. And you? I heard you work abroad." He nodded. "Yes, I spent a few years in France, expanding one of the branches of the family business. Now that things are more stable, I've returned to New York." He looked at her with a hint of compassion. I heard about your divorce. Honestly, I don't dare to ask much in case it saddens you. She looked at him and shook her head. Don't worry, I've already moved on. There was a silence. Both seemed to remember their old relationship. She recalled their college courtship, quiet and simple. She thought she had found her soulmate, but finally, because of her family's opposition and the rumors circulating that she was an illegitimate daughter, he also backed away. They separated in silence. Suddenly, he asked in a low voice, "Have you ever regretted that?" She took a deep breath and responded sincerely, "My youth with you is truly beautiful, but everything has passed and I don't regret it or blame anyone." He smiled sadly. "I understand. And now, what plans do you have?" She shrugged. "I just got out of a 6-year marriage. For now, I want to focus on myself and my son." Upon mentioning her son, he asked, "Is the boy okay? Are you handling being separated from him well?" She lowered her gaze. Her voice faded. "It's not easy, but I think it's the best option for him. We see each other often." He nodded and remained silent for a long while. Finally, he said, "If you need help with anything, I'll be happy to help. We are friends, after all, we have good memories." She smiled slightly. "Thanks, Javier." At that moment, the banquet hall erupted suddenly. Someone mentioned Matthew Vargas's name. He had also been invited as an honored alumnus, famous for his impressive investment results. Casually, his appearance caused a stir because everyone wondered if he would meet his ex-wife. She and Javier turned and saw Matthew enter with a serene appearance. He was wearing a white shirt and a dark suit, and his face still had a cold air. Although he was no longer on the board of directors, his influence remained great and everyone respected him. He headed toward them. His gaze stopped on her and Javier, sitting together. A flash of discomfort crossed his face, but he quickly hid his emotions. "Long time no see." Javier Mendoza shook Javier's hand and then looked at her. "I didn't expect you to come." She stood up, maintaining her calm. "I was invited and I confirmed my attendance." The atmosphere became tense. Javier stood up politely and smiled. "A pleasure to see you again, Mr. Vargas. Sit with us." Matthew shook his head with a tone that denoted rejection. "Thanks, but some friends are waiting for me." He looked at her out of the corner of his eye. "Actually, I wanted to see you to talk about one thing, but it seems you're busy." She knew he was referring to her sitting with her former boyfriend. She just responded, "We have nothing left to talk about." He bit his lip and finally turned around and left. The air around the table became heavy. A moment later, she said to Javier, "Let's go to the main area. People are going to say we're hiding in a corner." While being the guests of honor, he nodded. They walked together toward the VI Central area, where successful alumni were invited to give a speech. Isabel's name was also mentioned. She went on stage with confidence and briefly shared her experience in investments. People applauded her with enthusiasm when she affirmed that both men and women could succeed in the business world with the proper preparation. Upon getting off, several former classmates approached to congratulate and praise her. She thanked them humbly. Her gaze turned to Matthew. He was in a corner with his arms crossed, observing with indifference. She saw how he stared at her several times and then looked away as if he wanted to avoid her. Almost at the end of the party, he came over to talk to her. "Can we step out for a moment to talk?" Not wanting to cause a gross scene, she nodded. They went out to the hotel balcony. Below, the city streetlights shined and the night wind blew cold against the skin. She crossed her arms and waited for him to speak. "You and Javier." He hesitated as if choosing his words. "Do you still keep in touch?" She smiled slightly. "We're old friends. We hadn't talked in a long time, but we've run into each other here. It's rare that we exchange a few words." He frowned. His voice had a hint of jealousy. I'm not saying it's wrong, just out of curiosity. You were in love with him. Now you're divorced and he's still single, maybe. She looked at him, smiling without any warmth. Don't ask nonsensical questions. My life has nothing to do with you anymore. He bit his lip and clenched his fists. I know, but I can't help it when I hear you talk like that. You can't help feeling uncomfortable. She interrupted him. By what right do you feel uncomfortable now? He was speechless. Impotence was reflected in his eyes. He knew better than anyone that after his mistakes, he wasn't in a position to interfere in her private life. He simply realized he had never truly let her go. She sighed slightly. We are divorced. I want a new life, and you have to go your own way. Let's leave it at that. He nodded. His voice sounded hoarse. All right, I won't get involved, but I want you to know one thing. She took a step back and crossed her arms. Her gaze was sharp. Still what? Still want to possess me like before? I'm sorry, but you don't have a chance. Anymore. Those firm words stuck in his heart like a knife. He lowered his head. She swallowed and turned toward the lobby. The conversation ended in a suffocating space. When she returned to the room, the party was almost over. She looked around, but didn't see Javier. Perhaps he had already left or was talking to other friends. Instead, she heard some people whisper, "Look, it seems the ex-wife and ex-husband have argued." She pretended not to hear and left. Wherever she was, people always had something to say. If she had chosen this path, she had to be prepared to endure all the rumors. Outside, she ran into an old classmate. She grabbed her gently by the arm. Long time. I heard about your divorce. Don't be too sad. Sometimes for a woman, it's better to be freed. She smiled. I'm not sad. On the contrary, I feel liberated. The classmate nodded and they said goodbye. She called a car to return home. On the journey, she remembered Matthew's face with that expression of jealousy and regret. And she also thought about Javier, her first love. Everything was complicated, but she didn't want to waste time with anyone anymore. While the car went through the illuminated streets, her phone vibrated softly. A message from Javier. Congratulations on your brilliant speech today. Thanks for the conversation. I hope to see you soon. She kept the phone in silence. That night in New York, a cold seasonal wind blew, but it didn't stop the flow of cars. Sitting in the car, she was tired but with a clear mind. She knew she had to keep moving forward. Despite slight unease, she arrived home, showered, and went to bed. She tried to push away the recent images. If she had chosen to leave her former marriage behind, she had to accept running into her ex-husband in uncomfortable situations. Everything will be fine, she whispered. No need to waver. She closed her eyes and little by little fell asleep, preparing for a new day in which countless calculations awaited her in her independent life. The door to the past was closed, but the waves left by a broken marriage would keep arriving, even in a vaca. So, she promised herself to be strong. There was no turning back. Isabel woke up in her new apartment, stretched, took a deep breath, and walked slowly to the balcony to watch the traffic below. After the noisy divorce, she was no longer tied to the title of wife, nor did she worry about being the center of daily gossip. A mixture of freedom and a slight emptiness created a calm wave of complex emotions inside her, but at least she could make every decision in her life for herself. Starting today, it began. She dressed and drove to the company in which she had invested, where she served as a majority shareholder. In recent months, she had bet heavily on an educational software project with high hopes for a young and enthusiastic team. However, upon entering the meeting room, she immediately perceived a tense atmosphere. The project manager stood up with a pale face and reported that several legal procedures were blocked, and added to technical difficulties, the project was at risk of delay. If they didn't solve it in time, they could lose the funding flow and have to compensate their partners. She crossed her arms and listened in. Silence. On the screen, next to dense figures, the anxious looks of the team members were reflected. About 10 minutes later, everyone remained silent, waiting for her reaction. Isabel slowly spun the pen in her hand. Her gaze was cold, but she didn't hide her concern. This project was a turning point. If it failed, the economic loss would be only a part. The most important thing was that her credibility before other investors would also be affected. She calmed the team and said, "Understood. I will contact the international partners to buy us some time. The technical team should send me a detailed list of the errors. I will look for an expert to help us. We aren't in a critical phase yet, so don't be alarmed." Everyone nodded. The atmosphere relaxed a bit. Upon leaving the room, she immediately called an acquaintance in the software sector. Unfortunately, he was also trapped abroad. The situation didn't seem easy to resolve. She frowned, trying to keep her cool. She hung up, and upon opening the office door, tired, she stopped when she saw her secretary waiting for her. "Director, you have a visitor," she whispered. "President Matthew Vargas." Without giving her time to react, she saw Matthew emerge from a corner of the lobby. His appearance was so serene that it was indecipherable. She felt a pang of irritation, but feigned indifference. "What are you doing here?" He sketched a slight smile. "I heard you have problems with the project. You know that legal problems in the market run like wildfire. I know some people who could help, if you'll allow me." She was a little surprised. Information in the financial world flew. Had he come to help her, or was he trying to meddle again? Isabel pursed her lips. "Thanks, but I can solve this on my own." Matthew, as if expecting that answer, sighed slightly. "I know you don't like owing me anything, but legal disputes aren't easy to resolve, especially when there's a hurry. Think about it, and if you agree, I can organize a meeting with an expert lawyer in this field." She crossed her arms and remained silent for a few seconds. In reality, she desperately needed a fast channel for help. She didn't want to get too involved with her ex-husband, but it was difficult to deny his wide network of contacts. If she insisted, the project could fail and she could lose everything. Finally, she sighed. "All right. Send the information to my secretary. I'll think about it." He nodded slightly. "Review it and let me know soon. Time doesn't wait." Having said that, he left the company. She remained dazed for a moment. She knew he had always been excellent at managing business obstacles. Perhaps he really wanted to help, but she remained wary that he would use this excuse to get closer to her, or worse, to show her that without him, things would be difficult for her. In the afternoon, the project team informed her that the situation had become complicated. The European partners had sent a letter demanding a detailed report. She reviewed the documents in a hurry. The more she read, the more complex it seemed. Finally, she gritted her teeth and called Matthew. "I'll see your people. Send me the list of experts tonight so I can review it." On the other side of the line, his deep voice was heard. "Come see me. It will be faster if I introduce them to you in person than over the phone." She hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. After work, she drove to the Sames Anne Rome luxurious restaurant in the center of New York, where they had agreed to meet. Upon entering, she saw him sitting, waiting with his usual neat appearance. His face, as always, radiated competent energy. But today in his gaze, instead of coldness, there was an indecipherable tenderness. She sat down and went straight to the point. "Introduce them to me now." "I don't. I want a long dinner." He raised no objections and slowly handed her a folder. These are the papers for lawyer Ibanez. He has good relations with several departments, and this is a list of technical experts I've collaborated with. Whoever you need, I'll take care of contacting them. She took a quick look, noting the important information. Thanks. This is a purely professional collaboration, so I will pay the costs accordingly. He smiled. As you wish. But don't talk to me about money. Consider it a way to compensate you. She didn't respond, closed the folder, and moved to stand up. Isabella, he called. If you're in a hurry, we can order the food to go. I've ordered things I know you like. In any case, you have to eat something. She looked at the clock. The dinner hour had already passed. The tension of the project had mentally exhausted her, and that could affect her health. Thinking about it, she had no choice but to nod. They had a brief dinner. No one said much. From time to time, he asked her about Leo, and she responded with monosyllables. The distance between them remained a solid wall. She didn't want him back in her life, and he, without forcing her, wouldn't let her go either. Upon leaving the restaurant, she was on the sidewalk waiting to get into her car. Suddenly he grabbed her hand. Drive carefully. And if that team gets difficult, tell them to call me directly. I'll make sure they respect you. She pulled her hand away gently and looked at him with distance. Understood. Thanks, goodbye. On the way home, she immediately sent the documents to Elena for a legal review. Afterward, she took a hot shower and sat by the window contemplating the night streets. Matthew's image haunted her mind. After the divorce, he had suddenly become an exemplary father to Leo and at the same time appeared everywhere like a peacock, showing off his change. She smiled bitterly and wondered, what does he intend to play the hero who rescues me? The next day, she took Leo to school. Unexpectedly, Leo told her, Mom, yesterday Dad called and said that soon he'll take me to the park and that he wanted you to come too. You'll come, right? She shook her head, trying to maintain a soft tone. Mom is very busy these days. Have fun with Dad. When I have time, I'll take you somewhere else. The boy nodded, but couldn't hide his disappointment. Seeing her son's look broke her heart, but she couldn't do anything else. She still wasn't ready to share that kind of family activity with her ex-husband. Nothing more than leaving her son at the school gate, she received a call from Sofia Romano, the woman who had shaken her marriage. She didn't want to answer, but curiosity about why she was looking for her won out. On the other end of the line, an urgent and exhausted voice. Isabel, I need us to meet. It's something important related to Matthew. Do you have a moment? She snorted slightly. Do you still have something to say to me? I thought what was between us was already over. Sophia sighed. I don't want to go back to the past, but before leaving New York, I have to tell you a couple of things about him. Believe me or not, it's your decision. For some reason, Isabel agreed to meet. At noon, they sat in a small coffee shop. Sophia seemed much more gaunt than before. As soon as she saw Isabel, she said bitterly, in the end, the loser was me. Before, I thought I could count on him, but he's not the same as before. You kept all the assets and live well, while I'm in a dead end. I suppose you'll laugh. Isabel remained impassive. Even if I wanted to laugh, I don't even have the urge. All this you brought on yourself. What did you want to see me for? Sophia responded with a hoarse voice. I just wanted to tell you not to believe that he is dedicating his whole heart to you. He has changed because of regret, but inside there are many complexities. If you let your guard down, you'll fall back into his trap. Isabel laughed. I don't need you to give me that advice. I have no intention of going back to him. Sophia remained silent. Then, with a Bitter smile, she said. I see you're a truly ruthless person. All right, keep it up. I have nothing more to say. She stood up and walked out of the coffee shop. First, a cold wind blew in Isabel's heart. She didn't know what Sophia's true intention was. It could be simply to sow confusion or perhaps to warn her. In any case, she trusted that she wouldn't let herself be influenced easily. That afternoon, she met with lawyer Ibanez, recommended by Matthew, to discuss how to manage the Prudhoe's All.R project contracts. The conversation lasted until night. The results indicated that there was starting to be a solution. Lawyer Ibanez skillfully demonstrated the clauses, where the partners could give in and promise to take care of the negotiations. Personally, she sat in silence, drinking a black coffee. In a corner of her mind, although she didn't want to admit it, she felt grateful for Matthew's help. Upon leaving, she was going to pick up Leo when she received a call from Matthew. I picked up the boy from school. I'm going to stop by the WW supermarket. Are you coming? As always, she declined politely. I have pending work. You stay with Leo. Without waiting for his answer, she hung up. She felt guilty for her son, but every time she thought about being by her ex-husband's side, she felt a weight in her heart. She was afraid that ambiguous relationship would drag her deeper and deeper. She had to put a drastic break on it. At night, she sat in the living room reviewing the project documents. Her mind was chaos. At that moment, a message arrived on her mobile. It was from Matthew. The technical expert will contact you soon. Good night. She looked at the brief message and didn't respond. She simply closed her eyes. The golden light illuminated her thin shoulders. That was her life after the divorce. Busy, lonely, and sometimes unstable. And strangely, Matthew hovered around her like a shadow, a savior, and at the same time, an unwanted guest. She didn't regret her decision to divorce. Freedom was worth it. However, an invisible emptiness continued to leak through. Matthew Vargas, like a peacock, spread his tail, acting like a devoted father and a partner willing to do anything for her. But she knew he could never change the crack deeply engraved in her heart. She sighed and closed the documents. She turned off the light, letting the darkness envelope the room. She knew tomorrow would be another whirlwind, the project, her son, and the problems that constantly arose. She told herself she shouldn't lose her head, otherwise she could lose herself to his kind gestures. She couldn't forget how indifferent he had been for the last 6 years, leaving her alone so she could bear her wounds. She took a deep breath and got into bed. Sleep was slow to come between confused thoughts about the project and the image of the man who had just saved her from a legal crisis. They were once a marriage, they dreamed together, but now they felt a distance stranger than that. Of two strangers. Perhaps she had closed this chapter of her life. No matter how much he tried, there was no longer room for him in her heart. The next morning, Isabel prepared to go see her mother. Lately, Mrs. Garcia complained often that her daughter had abandoned her. She got ready and drove to her mother's apartment. As soon as Mrs. Garcia saw her daughter, she made a sour face and attacked her. "Where have you been? If your mother wants to see you, it has to be because I come to look for her." Isabel left the fruit basket and maintained a soft tone. "Mom, can you call me whenever you want? Why do you say we don't see each other?" Mrs. Garcia snorted. "Call you. If you're always busy, in the end you only think about yourself." Isabel sat in a chair, maintaining her calm as best she could. "If you need something, tell me directly." Mrs. Garcia changed her expression instantly. "You've gotten divorced and received a pile of money. I'm not asking for much, just that I've seen a bigger house to invite my friends. Couldn't you lend me some money? I'll be paying you back." Isabel expected it. Mrs. Garcia, before and now, loved a life of appearances, And now that she knew her daughter had $600 million, her ambition had grown. Isabel bit her lip. Mom, I'm not an ATM. If you want to buy a house, I can help you with a part, but I don't ask me for exorbitant things. I have to take care of Leo and take care of my investments. Mrs. Garcia got angry instantly. What do you mean? That your mother is a freeloader? I've raised you with great effort, and now that you have a little money, do you become stingy with me? Isabel said, slowly in a tired voice. It's not stinginess. I don't want you to get into debt or buy a house you can't maintain. I'll gladly give you a monthly allowance, but please don't overspend. Mrs. Garcia threw some real estate brochures on the table and shouted, I don't need it. I'll manage on my own. You'll see, I don't expect anything from you anymore. Having said that, she turned around, entered her room, and slammed the door shut. Isabel sighed. She felt bitter. Her mother. I didn't care how she was. She only wanted money. For years, she had known her character well, but even so, she felt a weight in her heart. She left the house with her mind blank. People usually say that family is a refuge, but for her, her mother only added more fatigue. Since she was little, she had seen Mrs. Garcia obsessed with resentment toward her father's family, always demanding that she marry well and be successful. When her marriage broke down, her mother started harassing her for money. She felt that the more successful she was, the more her mother used her. At noon, at the office, she received a call from an unknown number. On the other end of the line, a noisy voice. Are you the ex-wife of Mr. Matthew Vargas? He's here, at the bar completely drunk and causing a scene. We didn't have anyone else to call, so we used the number on his business card. Could you come pick him up? Isabel froze. She asked where he was, and without thinking, she left the Sodent company, took a taxi, and headed to a bar in an old alley. Upon arriving, she found a chaotic scene. Matthew was leaning on the bar with glassy eyes, gripping a bottle. Some customers recognized him and whispered. She approached quickly and helped him stand up. Matthew, what are you doing? Like this? He staggered, raised his head, and smiled bitterly. Isabel, you really came. I only had a little to drink, but his steps were unstable and he almost fell. With a mixture of anger and concern, she barely managed to hold him. The bar manager charged quickly and handed him over. With the help of a security guard, she barely managed to get him into the car. He gave off a strong smell of alcohol and his head fell onto her shoulder. Between mumblings, he murmured, I'm sorry, Isabel. I'm sorry for everything. She clenched her teeth, containing the irritation. Why had he gotten so drunk so suddenly? Normally, he was a cold person who rarely lost control. She closed the car door and told the driver to take him to his old house, but he stopped her by waving his hand. I'm not going there. It's an empty house. The child is in daycare. I don't want to go. And where do you? I want to go? She said, annoyed. He leaned back in the seat with a lost look and said with a choked voice, wherever you want. Having said that, he closed his eyes. She had no choice but to direct the car to her own apartment. Upon arriving, she dragged him with difficulty to the elevator. Luckily, a guard helped her get him into the house. She closed the door and, exhausted, shouted, Wake up, don't just stay there. Lying on the floor. But he didn't even open his eyes, only groaned weakly. She had no choice but to drag him to the sofa, take off his jacket, and wipe his from Cinevera face with a damp towel. In the midst of all the hustle and bustle, he suddenly grabbed her wrist. His breath brushed her face. Isabel, do you hate me? Her heart seemed to stop. She saw for an instant his red and bloodshot eyes. Under the effects of alcohol, he showed unusual vulnerability. She hesitated for a a moment and finally responded, "Go to sleep. Don't talk nonsense." He didn't let go of her hand. His voice broke. "Really, I regret it. You know, I've caused you too much pain." He couldn't finish the sentence and breathed with difficulty. Suddenly, he let out a laugh as if he had seen something funny. She let go of his hand and put a warm towel on his forehead. "Stop talking and sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." But he grabbed onto the edge of her clothes again like a child. Finally, his eyes closed and a hot tear rolled down the corner of his eyes. "You hate me, right?" I was wrong, Isabel." She had never seen him cry like that. Until now, he had always shown himself to be strong and arrogant. She sat there, frozen. Her hands trembled slightly, a mixture of anger, compassion, and a heart that was starting to soften. With a few tears, he had revived all the resentment she had stored for 6 years. "You should hate me. I'm the worst," he kept muttering. Suddenly, he collapsed toward her, resting his head on her shoulder. Her heart beat hard. She wanted to push him away, but she couldn't be so cold to such a drunk and hurt man. In the silent night, she heard his muffled sobs clearly. Finally, he fell asleep. His breathing was ragged. She settled him on the sofa and covered him with a thin blanket. She looked at his exhausted face, with his cheeks still damp. The man she had lived with for 6 years could also show himself to be so vulnerable. She gently stroked the wrinkles on his forehead. She felt a lump in her heart, returned to her room, and lay down, but couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, remembering his teary eyes. She wondered if he really regretted it. But what good was regret? The marriage was already broken. Could they go back? She smiled bitterly. No, we couldn't. He had betrayed her trust, and that trust could never be fully recovered. At dawn, she fell into a light sleep and was startled by a noise in the living room. She ran out and saw Matthew trying to get up, staggering. "Where are you going?" she asked, gasping. He held his head. His voice was hoarse. "I have to go home." She saw he wasn't sober yet and that his head hurt, that he could fall at any moment. She squeezed his shoulder so he would sit on the sofa. "It's just dawn. Rest a little longer. Your son is with your parents. There's no rush." He looked at her confused. He probably didn't remember last night well. A few seconds later, he murmured, "I'm sorry, I bothered you." "It's okay," she said coldly. "Leave quickly before there are more problems." He rubbed his forehead. Dizziness invaded him and he had no choice but to stay still. She poured him a glass of warm water and left it on the table. "Drink, it will be good for your hangover." He took the glass, drank a few sips, and took a deep breath. Then he raised his head and looked at her. "Did I say any nonsense last night?" She nodded. "Yes. You cried and said you regretted it." He froze as if he couldn't believe it. "You were so drunk that you made a fool of yourself," she said calmly. "I don't care if you truly regret it or if you were acting. I hope it doesn't happen again. I don't want to have to pick you up from a bar again." His face darkened as if it were a deep shame. "I'm so sorry. I had some stress. I drank a little and it got out of hand." She crossed her arms. Her voice was cold. "We all have moments of stress, but you don't have to self-destruct or bother others. Leo needs a serene father." He bit his lip and lowered his head. "I know. It won't happen again." He left the glass of water and stood up slowly to put on his jacket. "Thanks." Having said that, he headed for the door. Before leaving, he looked at her for a few seconds. In his eyes was something she didn't want to read. When the door closed, she sighed with relief. Fatigue invaded her to the marrow. She didn't like trampling on others, nor did she want to see him suffer, but she couldn't pretend she hadn't been hurt. Either everything had come too late. She just hoped he wouldn't torment her again with his drunken bouts. That afternoon, she went to pick up Leo from school. She wanted to compensate him by taking him to dinner. She waited outside the door and the boy ran out excited. "Mom." The boy smiled broadly and hugged her. She hugged him and rubbed her cheek against his. "Aren't you tired?" The boy smiled. "No, today I played basketball with my friends." She took him to a small restaurant and ordered some dishes. Leo talked about school and bragged about his drawing homework. It had been a long time since she had spent time alone with her son. Seeing the Anshay's Prosit boy's chubby face warmed her heart. She decided to see him more often. Although they didn't live together, her son needed his mother. But during dinner, the boy asked, "Mom, Dad arrived late last night and this morning he looked tired." He said his head hurt. "Is Dad sick?" Isabel froze for a moment. She supposed Matthew had made up an excuse to hide his drunkenness. She patted her son on the shoulder. "Could it be that Dad hasn't slept well?" "Don't worry, tomorrow he'll be better," Leo said innocently. "Then, can you wake Dad up tomorrow so he can go to work?" She smiled slightly. "Mom doesn't live with Dad, so I can't. But I'll call him on the phone." The boy nodded, believing her completely, and kept eating. At night, back home, she put her son to bed. Her heart felt calm for a moment. After the boy fell asleep, she sat in the living room playing with her phone. Unconsciously, she remembered Matthew's image from the night before. His vulnerability had touched her. She didn't expect him to know how to cry, to know how to regret. Although she knew everything was over, she couldn't prevent something inside her from being stirred. She told herself, "He lived for himself for years, leaving me alone with my wounds. What good is it that he cries now?" She turned off her phone, trying to push the confusion out of her mind whether he cried for real or was drunk. She didn't want to return to the starting point of the past. She had already exhausted herself mentally there. The night wind slipped through the curtains, carrying away confused thoughts. She ran her hand through her hair and smiled to herself. Whatever storm was approaching, she had to always be strong. Her new life had just begun, and she couldn't take a step back for a moment of weakness. She looked at the bedroom where Leo was sleeping. She promised herself that she had her son, her work, and herself to love. She stood up and turned off the light. Darkness covered the living room. In the darkness, the image of Matthew, drunk and exhausted, kept appearing, but she was determined. A broken relationship could never fully repair its cracks. Isabel woke up in her small apartment. By her side, Leo was still sleeping soundly. She tucked him in silence and stroked his soft hair. Lately, the boy wanted to be with his mother. It seemed understandable. He had spent most of his time with Matthew Vargas, so it was natural that he now wanted to be close to his mother. She sent a message to Matthew telling him that I would stay with the boy for a while so he could focus on his work without worrying. Seeing Leo's chubby face warmed her heart. Just a few days ago, she was stressed about the project, her mother's economic demands, and Matthew's drunkenness. But luckily, things had been going well lately. After contacting the expert technology lawyer, the partners had given in and the educational software project had overcome the difficult phase. Her heart had also relaxed a bit. The sound of the doorbell surprised her. Who could it be so early? She signaled Leo to stay silent and hurried to open the Bruettes' door. To her surprise, in the doorway was Mrs. Garcia. Her mother's face was full of anger. "So you brought Leo here and didn't tell me anything. I asked him where the boy was, and he told me with you. Why didn't you tell me a single word?" Mrs. Garcia's voice was sharp, as if she had committed a great crime. Isabel took a deep breath and tried to respond calmly. Leo wanted to be with me for a while. I thought you wouldn't be interested in this matter. Come in, don't stay out. There. Mrs. Garcia entered with a push. As soon as she sat in a chair, she looked at the apartment and shook her head. How can you live with a child in such a small place? Haven't you thought about saving up and moving to a bigger house? Now that you have so much money. Isabel felt a bit tired. She put water in the kettle and poured her mother a cup of tea. I'm comfortable here. For two people, we don't need much more space. I'm still investing and I don't want to spend too much on a big house. You drive me crazy. Mrs. Garcia left the cup and tapped the table with her fingers. If you want to live your life, do it. But Leo is my grandson. He has to live in a good environment. Soon, with the money you gave me, I'll get him a private tutor. What do you think? She didn't understand. A private tutor for Leo. I don't know who you know, but if it's necessary, I myself can look for a good school for him. You don't need to get involved. Mrs. Garcia stared her down. Are you looking down on me? Do you? I think I don't know anyone who can get a private tutor. Always doubting your mother. Do you think I only ask you for money? I do it for my grandson's sake. Remember that. Having said that, she took several business cards out of her bag and left them on the table. This gentleman is a retired PhD in pedagogy and this lady taught at an international kindergarten. I introduced them to you as a favor to my friends, so take a look at them. A slight feeling of guilt invaded Isabel. Mrs. Garcia was capricious, but perhaps she really wanted to do something for her grandson. She nodded and softened her voice. All right, Mom. I'll think about it. Thanks. Seeing that her daughter gave in, Mrs. Garcia snorted and looked toward the bedroom. Where is Leo? Tell him to come greet his grandmother. Isabel took her mother to see Leo. The boy smiled and greeted her politely. And Mrs. Garcia also stroked her grandson's head and gave him some advice. Seeing the scene, she felt a bit relieved to think that, although her mother had a bad temper, she truly loved her grandson. Upon accompanying Mrs. Garcia and turning around, she ran into Matthew Vargas in front of the elevator door. He was wearing a black suit and holding a bag of food. He probably came from a meeting and had bought something for Leo on the way. She was surprised, and Mrs. Garcia immediately put on a face of displeasure. And what are you doing here? What are you plotting now? Mrs. Garcia raised her voice. Matthew, bewildered for a moment, bowed to greet her. I brought some cookies. Leo likes. I didn't want to bother. Isabel had no choice but to approach and say firmly, since you've come, give the things to the boy and leave. We're going out soon, so don't make a scene here. He nodded and handed her the bag of cookies. In front of Mrs. Garcia, he remained silent and didn't attempt familiarity. Isabel, you seem busy lately. That's why I haven't called you. Has the situation with the project improved? He asked with concern. She nodded slightly. Thanks to the help of lawyer Ibanez, everything is running smoothly. Soon we will recover the investment. You no longer have to worry. Mrs. Garcia crossed her arms and intervened. Did you hear? My daughter manages on her own. Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Having said that, she pressed the elevator button with irritation and signaled Isabel to say goodbye to the prize visitor. Matthew lowered his head. Then I'm leaving. If you need anything, tell me. He glanced at Leo, who was inside. In his eyes was a hint of longing, but he didn't dare enter. Finally, he turned around and left. She watched his back walk away, dazed. Her mind was chaos. She felt trapped between her mother and her ex-husband, as if she could never escape. All relationships were a tangled ball that oppressed her. She sighed, left the bag of cookies in the kitchen, and returned to the room to change Leo's clothes. That afternoon, she stopped by the Berkshire project office to check on progress. Everyone, with happy faces, reported that the system modifications were almost finished and they were preparing for the RISO testing phase. Upon hearing it, she sighed with relief and smiled. After weeks of tension, finally good news arrived. While they were talking, she happened to see Javier Mendoza enter. He was wearing a light blue shirt, his face was radiant and his gestures natural as if he were in a familiar place. After graduating, he had made a name for himself in the real estate sector and then expanded his field to tech investment. It turned out he was also one of the strategic investors. She was quite surprised, as she didn't know he had a direct relationship with the company. Javier smiled and greeted her with total naturalness. I recently became an investor in this project. I was very glad to learn that you were a shareholder, Isabel. We have another opportunity to collaborate. She nodded. It surprises me that you didn't tell me, but I'm glad. With someone as experienced as you, the project will be more stable. He stayed by her side, listening to the manager's report. From time to time, he turned toward her and asked for her opinion on the budget allocation. She, leaving personal feelings aside, responded with great professionalism. They collaborated politely for a common interest. Seeing the scene, some employees whispered that now that they were old friends turned into colleagues, the project would be a success. At night, upon leaving the company, he proposed going for something light to eat. At first, she refused, but he said, I would like to talk a little more about the direction we are going to take. If you don't mind, can you give me a moment? She had no choice but to accept and accompanied him to a modest nearby restaurant. They ordered a few simple dishes and sat by the window. The cool breeze was pleasant. I heard the legal barriers have been resolved, he said slowly. What plans do you have for expansion in the local market? She thought for a moment and responded concisely. For now, I want the project to consolidate at a national level. Afterward, I'll think about expanding to Southeast Asia or beyond. I don't want to take risks when things aren't clear. He smiled. It's very much like you, Isabel, always moving forward with caution step by step. He remained thoughtful for a moment. When this project ends, what do you plan to do? Will you continue investing or will you take a break? She drank a seventh-in sip of water and shook her head. I still don't know. Right now my priority is Leo. The future will depend on how things go. Upon speaking of her son, her look softened and her smile gentled. He observed that expression. His face showed a touch of sadness. I heard you have a son. With Mr. Vargas. He must be a charming boy. I hope you do well, leaving the past behind. She didn't respond, nodded, and kept eating. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Matthew's number. She hesitated and then answered. His urgent voice was heard on the other side. Leo has a fever. He is crying and asking for you. Can you come? Her heart skipped a beat. Her son was sick. Of course, she had to go. She apologized to Javier, stood up immediately, paid, and left. Upon arriving, Leo was in bed with his forehead red and burning. Matthew was by his side with a damp towel. Seeing her, the boy sat up sobbing. Mom, she put her cheek to his forehead and felt the heat. She looked at Matthew. Why did his fever spike suddenly? He, with a face of concern, shook his head. When I picked him up from his grandmother's house, he was fine, but suddenly he said he was tired and started burning. I've tried to lower his fever with damp cloths, but he won't stop crying and calling you. Concerned, she calmed the boy. Calm down, sweetheart. Mom will take you to the doctor. Leo whined. I don't want to. Go to the hospital. I'm scared. I just want to sleep, Mom. I'm tired. It broke her heart. She had no choice but to give him an emergency antipyretic. and change his clothes for cooler ones. Meanwhile, Matthew, agitated, made an an appointment at the hospital. During that time, they collaborated to take care of Leo as if there were no problems between them. Suddenly, she realized that the scene was similar to one a few years ago when the boy was sick, only now, everything had changed. In the middle of the night, Leo fell asleep and the fever went down a bit. Exhausted, she collapsed into a chair. Matthew brought her a glass of warm water and said in a low voice, "Drink, you must be tired." She took the glass and remained silent. Upon raising her head, she saw him leaning against the wall. His eyes reflected deep concern. The golden light illuminated his face. He seemed thinner and more haggard than before. "Thanks for taking care of Leo," she said in a low voice. Her voice was no longer sharp. She understood that anyone gets anxious when a child is sick. He was also his father, and, of course, he would be worried. He looked at his son and shook his head. "It's what I have to do. I'm not as good at taking care of him as you are, but I always try." Upon hearing that, she remembered the night he was drunk and his prize, desperate hand on the sofa. Perhaps he was changing, or perhaps it was just for the love of his son. As dawn approached, Leo's fever had gone down completely, and he slept peacefully. She thought about leaving the boy at his house, but he didn't want to separate from his mother, so she decided to take him to her apartment. Matthew insisted on taking them. "It's safer if I drive. You're tired. Rest." During the trip, Leo slept in her arms. Matthew drove and from time to time looked at her in the rearview mirror. He seemed to want to ask something, but stayed quiet. Upon arriving, he parked the car and helped her take the boy to his room. Isabel adjusted his pillow, tucked him in, and turned around. She saw that he was still leaning against the door with a lost look. She signaled him to leave, so as not to wake the boy. Just as she turned around, she suddenly said, "Tomorrow you can come early to see the boy. If you think it's okay, let's go together to the Jaka doctor for a checkup." He was surprised and nodded. A slight smile was drawn on his lips. Upon saying it, she herself felt strange. It seemed that, thanks to the love for her son, a momentary breach had been created between them, but the line between resentment and affection remained too blurry. The night grew deeper. She drew the curtains so Leo could sleep peacefully. She, thinking about the changes of the day, was slow to fall asleep. The next morning, Leo woke up much better. Isabel sat him on the sofa and fed him a light puree. Her mother's heart was full of tenderness. Yesterday, when the boy had a fever, she almost fell apart. Now, upon seeing the blush on his cheeks, she sighed with relief. At that moment, they knocked softly on the door. Upon opening, she saw Matthew, as he had promised. He had brought milk and fruit, and smiled awkwardly. "I brought some milk for the boy. You aren't busy." She shook her head and told Leo to greet his father. The boy greeted him with energy. Matthew left the things on the table and asked his son tenderly how he was. While father and son chattered, she felt a mixture of familiarity and strangeness. "Mom said that when my fever went down, we would go to the doctor," Leo said. "Dad, are you coming with us?" Matthew looked at her, waiting for an answer. She nodded in silence. "Yes, it's better to do a checkup. He is taking the medication, so he has to be monitored. If you have time, it will be more comfortable if we go together." Thus, after breakfast, the three got into the car. For the first time since the divorce, they moved together like a family. She, trying not to show her emotions, maintained a serene expression, and he concentrated on driving in silence. Leo chattered, asking his father to tell him a funny story and his mother a bedtime story. It was as if the boy tried to unite them again. At the hospital, the doctor said that Leo only had mild pharyngitis and that by avoiding cold things and taking the medication he would be fine. I'm already cured, the boy exclaimed excitedly. I want to eat fried chicken. She shook her head. The doctor said you still can't eat fried foods. Wait a few more days and Mom will make you chicken broth. What do you think? The boy became glum. Matthew smiled, stroked his head, and looked at her. Let's look for a good place for broths, that way the boy changes flavor a bit. She accepted. The three stopped at a chicken broth restaurant. Leo, at first reluctant, finished half a bowl and smiled. From time to time, upon raising his head, he ran into her warm gaze. Upon finishing eating, he offered to take them home. On the way, Leo fell asleep in the back seat. Taking advantage of the fact that the boy was sleeping, Matthew looked at her. Out of the corner of his eye. Thanks for yesterday. You must be tired too. I knew it would bother you, but I didn't have anyone else to call. Leo only asks for his mother. She looked away and said in a low voice, Take care of yourself, too. If you get sick, your son will worry. After all, we are his parents and I have to take care of him together. He responded with a yes in a low voice. The car fell into silence again. Upon arriving at the apartment, Leo woke up and hugged his father's neck. Dad, come up to the house. Read me a story. Matthew hesitated for a moment and looked at her. Isabel bit her lip. Finally, she gave in. All right. Come up only to read him a book. They entered the apartment. Leo lay on the sofa and asked his father to open a book. Matthew, with a bitter smile, looked for a story on the shelf. Isabel observed the scene from a corner. The image of a loving father and son like before moved her heart. When the boy was small, he had also adored him like that. But the memory of the infidelity remained vivid. She couldn't forget all the fetus wounds immediately. Leo, listening to the story his father read to him, started to close his eyes. She brought a blanket and tucked him in. Matthew put the book down and went out to the balcony. She, not to wake Leo, closed the glass door and followed him. Outside, the sun shined and a soft breeze swayed the trees' leaves. They stood side by side, contemplating the traffic below. Isabel, he started, you still hold a lot of resentment toward me. She clenched her fists and sighed. I don't know. It might be resentment or just disappointment. No matter how much you change, I can't erase old memories. He turned around. His gaze was determined. I understand, but I don't want to give up. At least as far as compensating you and the boy goes. I don't expect you to forgive me. Just let me take better care of you. She turned her head. Her voice faded. You call that compensating? I also needed you in the past, but where were you? For 6 years, you only appeared when you needed a shield and then caused even more problems. I think it's too late for you to now say you regret it and want to compensate. He swallowed and looked at Leo sleeping behind the glass door. I know it's late, but I don't want to give up. Although you won't allow me back as your husband, I want to be by your side, by the boy's side, when you need me. She smiled bitterly. How contradictory. We are divorced. How can we pretend to be a normal family? Set boundaries. Don't complicate things anymore. He lowered his head and said, Nothing more. Under the sun, sadness overshadowed his face. She felt a pang in her chest, but her reason remained firm. She couldn't fall into his arms again so easily. There had been too much pain and deception. A few days later, Leo recovered and Isabel focused on her work again. The project successfully completed the testing phase and the partners promised a long-term collaboration. Her mood improved considerably. One afternoon, she met with Javier Mendoza to sign the new contract. After the negotiations, they toasted with hot tea. I hope we collaborate for a long time, she said, raising her cup. He smiled. Of course, when this project ends. I hope you're interested in other ideas. Isabel, he paused and stared at her. Honestly, I'm glad to see you stronger than before. It seems pain didn't stroke her, conquer you. She smiled. Life has to continue. My son needs a mother who worries about the future, not one who lives mired in sadness. He nodded. In his gaze there was respect. That's true. You've changed a lot, but you still keep the clarity of that time. I hope you're always happy. Just when they were about to stand up, she saw a familiar figure waiting at the gratings bras at a baz inayet door of the meeting room, and she froze. It was Matthew. He had returned. Perhaps he had business to discuss with the executives, or perhaps he was waiting for her. Deliberately. Before Javier could greet him, Matthew approached. Excuse me, can I talk to Mrs. Torres alone for a moment? He tried to lower his voice, but his tone sounded like an order. Javier frowned slightly, but then shrugged. No problem, I'm already finished. See you later. He smiled at her and left. She looked at Matthew and sighed. Slightly. What's wrong? He rolled up his sleeves slightly. His voice was urgent. I just received a call. It seems Mrs. Garcia is arguing with someone at the gate of Leo's school. She's screaming that they won't let her take the boy because you haven't allowed it. Upon hearing about her mother, she froze. Why? Did Mom go to pick up Leo without telling me anything? What mess has she gotten into now? He shook his head. I don't know. She called me crying and screaming. I think we should go quickly. Without thinking more, she ran to the parking lot. Matthew followed her quickly, and both got into the car and headed to the Ross school. Upon arriving in front of the main gate, she saw Mrs. Garcia with a face red with anger, pointing at a teacher. By her side, Leo, scared, horrified, approached and gently pulled Mrs. Garcia's arm. Mom, what are you doing? It's almost time for dismissal. If you scream like that, everyone will look at us. Mrs. Garcia was indignant. You don't know. This teacher wouldn't let me take Leo. She said I didn't have permission from the parents. I told her who I was, and she treated me like a kidnapper. I turned out that the uproar was because she hadn't registered her mother's name at the school. The teacher, embarrassed, explained, according to the school's rules, the person who comes to pick up the child must be on the list. Although the child said it was his grandmother, we couldn't be sure just like that. We already had a similar incident in the past. Isabel hurried to calm everyone. She is my mother. I didn't register her name, that's why they didn't know her at school. I'm so sorry, teacher. From now on, I'll make sure to warn in advance. The teacher nodded, apologized to Mrs. Garcia, and asked her to follow the procedure. Next time, Mrs. Garcia, although still angry, gave in. After grumbling a bit more, she took Leo and left. Meanwhile, Matthew, who had been to one side, took the boy in his arms. The boy was trembling, scared by the scene. She patted him on the shoulder and said gently, It's okay, sweetheart. It's just that grandma. I got angry because no one knew her. Leo sobbed. I'm sorry, Grandma, I thought. You could pick me up from school. Mrs. Garcia, without giving in, turned toward her. You make simple things so complicated. I'm taking Leo for a while. I have to go to the supermarket to buy him some clothes. Before Isabel could say anything, Matthew intervened. Ma'am, you should have told Isabel before. Perhaps she had other plans. Mrs. Garcia adjusted her bag and snapped at him. You don't have to give me lessons. I want to spend time with my grandson. Do you think I'm going to sell him? Today's incident was the school's fault. Don't blame me. Matthew got angry for a moment, but held back. Isabel, seeing that the situation was getting ugly, signaled him to shut up. She sighed. All right, Mom. Take Leo to the supermarket, but he has to be back Before 7. I have to help him with his homework. Mrs. Garcia left with her grandson. Matthew stayed by Isabel's side. Both sighed with relief. They walked together toward the car. No one spoke. Finally, he said, "Your mother hasn't changed. She has a very strong character. Talk to the school so there are no more misunderstandings." She nodded. "I'll do it right now. From now on, my mother will also be difficult with you. So don't confront her, you'll only make things worse." He nodded. "Yes, I don't want to argue and much less have Leo get scared." At that moment, she realized that although they had different opinions, they had a common goal: protecting their son. She looked at him directly. "From now on, we have to organize ourselves well. Who picks him up? Who takes care of him? So that my mother doesn't act on her own and cause problems again." He smiled bitterly. "All right. When I go to pick up the boy, I'll notify you, and you do the same for our son." Upon hearing that, she felt a weight in her heart. If they had done it before, perhaps there wouldn't have been so much confusion, but the past couldn't be changed, and for now, the only thing they could do was act in the most civilized way possible so their son would grow up in peace. He reached out and subconsciously brushed her hand. She was startled and pulled her hand away. Maintaining a serene expression, she said, "Don't do that. Don't cross the crossed line." He responded with a millimeter and withdrew his hand, powerless. "I know. You seemed very stressed. I just wanted to comfort you a little." She shook her head. Her voice faded. "I'm fine, go. I have work too. My mother will bring Leo at night." He had no choice but to nod and leave. Between them, there was still an invisible and indelible distance. In the depth of the night, the apartment was silent. Leo, after shopping with his grandmother, was sleeping soundly. She turned off all the lights and sat alone by the window. The faint moonlight filtered through. She picked up her mobile and reviewed the congratulatory messages from her friends for the project's good progress, the idea quote, work inquiries from Javier, and several missed calls from Matthew. For a while, and she hadn't returned his calls. Everything seemed to repeat in her life. Her mother's interference, Matthew's attempts to compensate her son, who became vulnerable when sick, and she herself, who longed for peace but wasn't able to push anyone out of her world firmly. New business advances, the collaboration with Javier, the company in full growth. In the midst of so many changes, she only tried to stay sane and not fall apart. Outside, the night wind blew gently. She closed her eyes in silence and remembered Matthew's words. "I don't expect you to forgive me, just let me take care of you." He had truly changed. Could that sincerity erase the deep wound of betrayal? She knew the only answer was time. Or perhaps, no matter how much time passed, her wound would never heal. She hugged a pillow and told herself, "Stop thinking. Tomorrow, I have many things to do." She stood up and silently entered her son's bedroom. She watched him for a good while, smiled, and gently stroked his back. Whatever happened, she had Leo and an independent life. She trusted herself. She would no longer show herself to be too weak before anyone, not even her ex-husband, and would advance toward the future by herself. She got into bed and tucked herself in. She listened to Leo's regular breathing. It was a precious sound she wanted to protect, and she was prepared to face any storm. Sleep arrived slowly, putting an end to a long day full of conflicts between the past and the present, but she knew that tomorrow, countless challenges awaited her, and she would have to strive more to reach normal happiness, even if that happiness no longer took the form of a complete family.